Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in Nigeria, where a peaceful protest organised by a coalition of civil society groups at the headquarters of the Nigerian Human Rights Commission in Abuja has been disrupted by groups claiming also to be CSOs, but in support of Showere's continued detention by the DSS. Arise News correspondent Chiman Wanko reports.
Early in the morning, civil society activists gathered at the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja. Their demands from the Nigerian government is to free all political prisoners, including the leader of the Revolution Now movement, Omoyele Sowore. They also want the government to show a practical commitment to human rights and the rule of law. Suddenly, a second group shows up, chanting. It disrupts the protest, and they now begin to ruffle up members of civil society. They also attack the Jade Onju and chase him away. Exactly 2 weeks ago, civil society gave the Nigerian government a 14-day ultimatum to release the detained publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore. It has expired.
We are also disappointed that the continuous violent violation of fundamental human rights of all Nigerians is in the increase in this country. We are also worried that there's a deliberate and calculated attempt by some people who are beneficiaries of state-sponsored violence to continue to orchestrate violence against Nigerian people. And the example is what we have seen today. The same victims of states, they are the ones that have been mobilized. They will not help them to go to school. They will not help them to, get education. They will not get them to get any decency in life. But they are ready to mobilize them for political violence. They are ready to mobilize them to come and unleash terror on their fellow human Nigerians.
With the expiration of the ultimatum, civil society says that the government leaves it no choice but to follow its next line of action.
We gave a 14-day ultimatum, which expired today. So today is just a commencement action. We came here today peacefully to give the demands again to the custodian of our rights, which is the National Human Rights Commission. Now, the next steps are very clear to us. Into the new year, and in January, there's going to be another protest. Today, this rally is taking place in Abuja and in Lagos. In January, in early January, we are going to continue if those demands are not met. We are going to continue, and we are going to expand beyond Lagos and Abuja. We are going to include 3 other cities.
Nigerian civil society groups say they will now occupy more offices of the National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria. Shima Nwankwo, Arise News.
Yeah, well, quite a very untidy situation there. Mm-hmm. I think that, to find a situation whereby it's not just government that will be accused of restricting the scope of freedom of expression, but that some counter-NGOs will insist that some other persons do not have the right to express their views. I think it's very unfortunate. It shows, how low we seem to have gone in terms of how civil society itself is organized. You will recall that 2 weeks ago, a coalition of 200 civil society organizations had served an ultimatum on the president that in 2 weeks, 5 demands, almost after the fashion of what we have in Hong Kong, should be met. Demand 1, that President Buhari should immediately address the nation on the many issues of concern that have been raised with regard to respect for the rule of law. 2, that there should be an investigation of the officers who, stormed the court in the case of Sowore and DSS. Now, that seems to have been met because the Attorney General of the Federation came forward to say that they set up a committee to investigate what transpired.
But did they only meet that because of the global issues, because the world is now watching and the United States has intervened?
Well, they have met that, maybe, as you said, in response to international and local pressures. Then 3, they were demanding also the release of Omoyele Sowore.
Yes, of course.
And also the release of all illegally detained persons unconditionally. So these are some of the demands, but the government met only one, and they had said if the government did not meet all the demands, they would picket National Human Rights Commission offices across Nigeria, and they will call on other Nigerians to join them. So they were ignored, more or less, by the federal government. And so on Monday, on the expiration of the ultimatum, they decided to go and picket the National Human Rights Commission in Abuja, beginning with the main office in Abuja. And then this other group, claiming to also be an NGO, a group called Center for Leadership and Development Initiative.
Why did you say claiming to be an NGO?
No, I said claiming to be.
we really don't know who they really are.
Well, I mean, if you're a non-governmental organization, then you're an NGO.
Okay, so, they also carry their own placards, and they were pro-government, pro-Buhari. They were saying no to saboteurs, stop trying to sabotage the Buhari government. These are foreign mercenaries. Foreign mercenaries will not be allowed. And then, of course, that degenerated into conflict between the CSOs on one side and this NGO on the other hand. And, there was an attack on the anti-Buhari group. And Deji Adeyanju, one of the activists, was specially targeted. He and two others were beaten with sticks. They were assaulted.
But at what point
and
does
they
this
ended up in the hospital.
This is turning into jungle justice.
You know the truth.
This is people that were... Showore was in court when he was dragged out. I mean, at what point does the rule of law kick in? This is not normal. It's not normal. It's not legal.
That's the problem, because at the end of the day, when we're the rule of law till tomorrow remains a big problem, because the question is, are we really following the rule of law? Respect for the decision of the courts, equality. There is no way you can say you're coming to a peaceful protest and you say, oh, they insulted me. And because you feel insulted, you attack someone. Deji Adeyanju, he's obviously receiving treatment at the moment. It was quite terrible. So it just begs the question, what are we really fighting for? You're saying, okay, fine, you do not want these people protesting, you're pro-Buhari, you're pro the decision of the government. But at the end of the day, why do you need to be violent? That just explains what we're really dealing with here. It's not a matter of, oh, we just wanted to tell you. It's a matter of, look, by fire, by force. If you don't accept it, we're going to fight you.
But the sad part of it was that, the security agents were said to have been there, and that they were very reluctant in getting involved, to stop either the Adeyanju or the anti-government protesters from being beaten. And going forward, you are likely to have a situation where you have regular breakdown of law and order. One group will take this position, another group will take this position, and then the irony is that you cannot claim that both groups are not entitled to the freedom of expression.
And you know what I find the scariest about this whole situation is most recently, the governments or the courts have decreed in the United Kingdom that MI5 are allowed to commit illegal murders in the course of duty. And we know that we're a British colony, so we are, of course, going to follow suit with the issues that were taking place with the DSS and the CSOs. It's incredibly scary as to what the future holds.
It is, absolutely. But let's also remember that your freedom literally stops when another man's right begins. So let's understand that while you're trying to exercise...
The Constitution states freedom of speech?
No, of course. But if your freedom of speech is going to affect my freedom of expression or my freedom to, my right to life or to protest, obviously, then that now becomes a problem. So your freedom should not influence, my rights to certain things according to the Constitution as well. Well,
let's hope that the police, will try to identify those persons who resorted to violence and that they are brought to book. And that the police, in every instance, will remain committed to its responsibility to maintain peace, and stability, and ensuring that nobody constitutes himself or herself into a public nuisance. The police must maintain complete neutrality where, persons are protesting and expressing their legitimate points of view, either for or against government.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next story. Now the Nigerian government says there is no date yet for reopening of the country's land borders, which were closed in August. Speaking with journalists on Monday, Mariam Katagum, Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, explained that the date for the borders to be reopened would be fixed after a joint patrols team set up by Nigeria and its neighbours submits its recommendations. Katagum said the joint team is made up of Customs, Air Force and other security agencies of the country. According to her, the recommendations of the team would tell if Benin Republic and Niger Republic have complied with trade protocols of the ECOWAS. And that is, of course, the Economic Community of West African States. What do we think about this story, Doctor?
Well, the president himself, had said that, look, the closure of the border will be temporary. And both the government, both the president and the Minister of Information have drawn public attention to the gains that Nigeria has recorded from closing the borders. But I think that what should be stressed is the position of the president that this will be temporary, and the general consensus that the closure of the borders cannot be a permanent, solution either to the challenge of smuggling, which the president says has reduced considerably by about 50%, or customs revenue, which the Minister of Information informed us has jumped from about 2 trillion to about 5 trillion.
Yes, from what I understand, customs revenue is doing incredibly well.
The gains may be there, but we also know that, food inflation has increased consistently.
Yes, because we don't have any chicken in Nigeria and no rice.
So because
Which is a big problem. It's Christmas,
Because of the border closure. Some people say, well, whatever hardship arises from that, we should tolerate it. We should be able to make some sacrifice. But in terms of ECOWAS protocols, what Nigeria is insisting upon is that Benin Republic and Niger cannot become routes for dumping, imports, their own imports on Nigeria. But we'll take a short break now. When we return, the morning show will continue. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News.
Absolutely.
We're still taking a look at headlines in some of today's newspapers. And before we went on break, we were talking about the closure of the
borders.
Yes, we did.
Yes, but do you have another story for us?
Actually has the next story.
Yes, we do. We do. Now, Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg resigned yesterday over the deadly MAX 737 debacle that has plunged the aircraft maker into crisis and damaged its reputation as one of the stalwarts of American industry. Now, the company's board said a change in leadership was needed to restore confidence in Boeing as it works to repair relationships with regulators and others in the wake of the 2 MAX 737 crashes that killed 346 people in all. However, DePaul University aviation expert Joe Schwartzman said that Boeing has been overly optimistic over the severe challenges ahead of the 737 MAX, and it's becoming evident that there's been an element of non-disclosure of this. And that's all kind of pointing to him.
We thought Muilenburg would stay on through the worst of the crisis and then maybe pass the baton when things were closing. But I think this has become enough of a soap opera. There's been enough loss of trust among some of the customers of Boeing that they're taking a big step here, and it surprised a lot of us. The whole company, of course, made some major safety blunders on his watch, and to the extent things point to him as subject to debate, but he was clearly at the head during that. Some of the critical decisions. I think, though, more recently, after the tragic loss of life, I think Boeing has been repeatedly overly optimistic and maybe. Well, as Kachi said in the introduction, I mean, Boeing, with the crash of the Lion Air jet in Indonesia in October 2018 and the Ethiopian airline in March 2018, all within a space of 5 months. Boeing has been having reputational issues. Yeah. It has suffered, one of the major crises in its more than 100 years of existence. And there are many who are not even pleased with measures that have been taken by the company. About a week ago or so, Boeing decided to stop the production of the MAX 737 because the orders have dropped up to about 40 planes.
Some airports aren't even allowing them inside any longer.
Yes, the various regulators across the world grounded the 737 MAX, since mid-March. Yeah. And there's no indication that either the FAA in the US or any aviation regulator anywhere else would lift that ban on 773 MAX. So there have been calls for the removal of Muilenburg, but they've done it now. David Calhoun will take over in January. But even at that, many people are not pleased, particularly persons who lost their loved ones. They're saying that it's still the same old order, that is still in charge of operations at
Which is
Boeing.
sad because everybody knows Boeing. This is the airline or the type of plane that carries you across the world everywhere. You go on the 747, you go from London to America to wherever, you're normally on a Boeing 747. So for one of their planes or one of their models to suffer so greatly to the detriment of the company as an entire whole, it's incredibly unfortunate. And as you said, the most unfortunate part about this is the loss of lives.
Exactly, and a lot of people, just as you said, they believe it's a structural issue. They believe it's like taking out one problem and replacing it with another, because at the end of the day, it is still the same circle of people that are managing this organization. So they don't believe anything is going to change, but they do appreciate the fact that something has been done. But the question is anything going to change moving forward?
Yeah, but you see, the bigger embarrassment that Boeing has also suffered is that apart from the problem that they say they have with the MCAS software system in 737 MAX, just over the weekend, you know, a Stateliner space shuttle that they worked on also had issues. So I think people just say, oh, what's going on with Boeing?
A lot of cutting corners are being
somebody's
suspected.
head needed to be chopped off.
Absolutely, and the rot starts from the top.
Had to go.
Well,
yes, indeed.
Moving on now from what's going on with the Boeing 737, let's talk to Aaron Akerejola right about now. He joins us to talk some sports. Hello, Aaron.
How you doing this morning?
I'm phenomenal. How do you do?
Doctor, it's good to have you. It's good to see you today. And unfortunately, I might not be going the route you wanted me to go.
Good morning.
Okay, but this is about a Nigerian, by the way.
My favorite type of Nigerian.
Okay, and let's tell you that Anthony Joshua's trainer, Angel Fernandez, has slammed Andy Ruiz Jr. and thinks there is no point in a trilogy fight. Back on the 7th of December, Joshua exacted the perfect revenge with a masterful performance to outperform the out-of-shape Mexican. 6 months earlier, he was the victim of one of the boxing biggest ever shocks when Ruiz Jr. floored him 4 times, securing a 7th-round knockout and snatched 4 heavyweight titles. And as it stands right now, Andy Ruiz Jr. is almost smelling the money. He made a whopping 13 million from a losing position, while Anthony Joshua made 85 million. When he won Anthony Joshua back 6 months ago, he actually made just 7 million. So he's actually gone in for another major fight with the hope that he can actually get a payday. And he's making excuses that he partied for 3 months.
He partied for 3 months straight. He was 20 stone overweight. I mean, what was he expecting?
Exactly, he was clearly unprepared.
And the trainer of Anthony Joshua is saying all that is bollocks. You lost, and you lost because you were not good enough.
You know what I think? I think it was greatly underestimated. You know, you just won a match and you overestimate your power to do this.
No, he had lost the wow factor.
Exactly.
I think the Joshua camp were ready for whatever he was going to bring to the table. Joshua had his head screwed on right, because I think Anthony Joshua had lost his bearing because of the celebrity lifestyle.
Do you think so? I happen to think that this was all I call it a long con. I think they were looking into the future and they realized that if they allowed Anthony Joshua to lose the first fight, the money that he would recoup from the second fight would be even more than if he had won the first.
I think that was pure luck. I think that was luck.
It's a personal opinion, but I happen to think my Anthony Joshua is a very smart man.
Difficult to prove. The point made by Fernandez is that, look, in sports, you should be a sportsman.
Yeah.
When you lose, you take it. When you win, you'll be gracious, you know, even in victory.
Yeah.
And that in the case of Andy Ruiz, the excuse that he's given, that he's, been partying and drinking and eating a lot, will not stand, because he's supposed to be a professional. And that he should have taken the defeat as a man. And I think there is a sense in which he took away from the victory of, Anthony Joshua in the rematch on December 7th. And he rules out completely making it a trilogy encounter. And what many are looking forward to is perhaps an encounter between Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder.
Now, that is the enticing one, because the point is this. Anthony Joshua, it was almost like Anthony Ruiz Jr. has been reduced to a footnote in Anthony Joshua's legacy, literally, because as it stands right now, the fight everyone has always wanted to see was, first of all, Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. That would see them unify all bets together, 5 of them together. That was delayed because of this blip in the radar. And if that is not happening, we're going to be having, of course on the 2nd of February, we're going to be having Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. And whoever emerges as a winner in that particular bout
Deontay Wilder
would likely to be Deontay Wilder.
It's likely in February.
We'll meet Anthony Joshua.
We'll meet Anthony Joshua.
But before that, Anthony Joshua has a fight with Kubrat Pulev, is that not correct?
Yes, that's a mandatory fight to actually defend his belt. That he should be able to run through. But right now, Anthony Joshua will be going into every fight with a little bit of caution. But the fight everyone still wants to see. In as much as the Brit versus Brit is quite enticing with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, but the most enticing fight is still Deontay Wilder,
Absolutely.
the bronze bomber going against Anthony Joshua, because they are still asking who is the better boxer, who is the stronger boxer, who packs the most punch. And I don't know, the more they delay, the more money they can actually squeeze out of this. And for boxing has become more about the money, boxing has become more about
the showmanship.
Hype,
Yes.
as against the sport itself.
Yes.
We've been crying for this fight for 2 years, and we're still
So
here
it's better
do it.
to keep expectations high.
Exactly.
So that you can optimize the game.
Age is not on the side of Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder is in his mid-30s. Anthony Joshua is just crossed the 30
But he's still as agile as ever.
No, the older you get, the more you lose your speed, you lose your strength. We want to see these people fight at their prime.
So in your opinion,
at the end of the day,
if Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder were to go head-to-head, who would win?
right now, Deontay Wilder will actually will floor and bring him to the canvas probably 3 or 4 times.
You can't be too sure.
Based on antecedents.
But you know,
Because
it's
Deontay
things
Wilder,
like this that makes the wow factor in Anthony Joshua just spectacular.
Anthony
Because he
Joshua
just-
has shown that he could be rattled. In two major fights, he's been rattled already. Talking about the fight with Vladimir Klitschko that actually thrust him into the limelight and made him a star, literally. And this Andre Ruiz fight. So,
Okay, let's move on to the darting story that you have for us, because that's
right.
incredibly interesting.
Okay, yesterday, our social media went into overdrive as the World Darts Championship was briefly halted on Monday night after a power cut interrupted the action at the Alexandra Palace. The London Arena was plunged into darkness as fans waited for the third round encounter between Peter Wright and Sergio Asada. Pictures were posted on social media of the venue shrouded in darkness, with members of the crowd using their phones as torches. Before the power cut, Gary Anderson fought back from the brink to recover from a raging birthday hangover in the nick of time.
What's up with everyone partying?
Well, but the power outage was restored, wasn't it?
It was restored, and it's always a big deal, and it always shows a little bit of incompetence on the side of organizers.
But can't you have technical
Of
issues?
course.
No technical issues.
There are
Explain it as
technical issues and there are
Yes,
issues that shouldn't be happening.
it shouldn't be happening.
Blackouts in a sporting event like that
Yes,
should
a
not be
major
happening.
sporting event. So a few years ago at the Super Bowl, when Beyonce was performing, after the Super Bowl, after she had performed, there was blackout. The whole world were visited on the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And the excuses the organizers gave was that Beyonce used too much light,
much
too
power.
much energy, and at the end of the day,
Which means that blackout is not a Nigerian invention.
I knew you were going to say that, Doctor. I knew you were going to say
It
that.
does, but I am curious, how do the fans, them using their torchlights, we've seen situations where in big events like this, there's a blackout and fans are upset, they're walking out, they're tweeting, they're upset. But was that the reaction, even if they did use their torchlights, was that the reaction?
No, that was not the reaction. Certainly some people might have grumbled, but they were there for something, and the organizers insisted that even though the blackout was restored, they said not until they were able to go live. That they could not continue.
Aaron, thank you. I would have loved to ask after Fallon Sherlock, the woman, the first woman to win at the World Darts
She's been trying to blaze for that, but unfortunately, she seems to have met Waterloo at some point. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's all on the news headlines.